Hello, thank you for joining us on this video tonight, this Wednesday night youth video. Normally we meet in person and that kind of thing, but tonight, because of some circumstances, we are doing this over video. So thank you for joining, for being a part of Youth Connect Night here at Meadowbrook. We're so excited for you to be watching. We're right in the middle of a series. It's the second week of a series called Only the Young. And we're talking about what it means to be young and how that relates to our faith and what that means. And so as someone who is older, twice the age of many teenagers, I'm probably more, you see me as more of an older person now, and that's fine, that's okay. But one of the things you figure out is there's some things as you get older, you figure out there's some things that you can really only do when you're young. Like there's things like I can't drink a ton of energy. I love energy drinks. I think they're great. Some people hate them. Some people are going to hate me for saying I like energy drinks. That's fine, whatever. But you, like when I was younger, I could drink lots of energy drinks. It wouldn't be a problem. But today, that just really wouldn't be a good situation. And there's just a lot of things like that. You can, when you're young, you can stay up so late and then get up so early, and it doesn't affect you that much. And then you can hang out with your friends when you're supposed to be studying, and that's a thing. That, you know, when you get older, there's not really studying, but you wish you had more time with your friends. And then eating, you can eat 10 bags of Takis for all those people who love Takis. And drink all the sodas and everything you want, and you just like, it doesn't even affect you, and you probably won't even gain any weight. But those things hit you differently when you get older. You can listen to music and go to loud concerts and all that kind of thing. You're singing so loud, you're louder than the concert. So, and you can send ridiculous memes to each other. Those are I mean, I do that as an adult, so I don't know. That's not really a young thing either. Dressing up for Spirit Day. If your school has a Spirit Day and you get to dress up crazy, take advantage of it, because there's not Spirit Days when you're older. You don't have those. There's not an opportunity to just dress goofy. People just stare at you when you do that when you're older. So there's things in our life that when we're young, we do these things and we think, well, I'm young, and so I might as well do it now because I might not be able to do it when I'm older. And that is true. There's probably going to be a point in your life where you won't live so close to all of your best friends. And there won't be a point in your life where you won't be able to have your parent or your step-parent or whoever make you food whenever you want it. At some point, you have to make your own food. And so this excuse of like, well, I'm young, so I might as well take advantage of it is not a bad thing at all. It's true. It's actually something we're like, I think we should embrace. Young people say, hey, I'm only young once, so I might as well do it. Now, sometimes we kind of take that and we look at it and we flip it and we use it as an excuse, right? We almost use it as an excuse to do something that maybe we shouldn't do, right? I can remember that when I was a teenager and I got my license, it was like all I wanted to do was just drive around all the time. I wanted, it's like all this freedom. And I'd go and spend my money. Money would burn a hole in my pocket and that kind of thing. And I remember actually one thing that when I was a teenager that we would do with me and my friends is we all, like my friend group, we love playing Madden. I still play Madden to this day. It's a lot of fun. But we would play like tournaments with each other. We'd play hours and hours into the night. Like on a Friday night, we'd all get together. We'd play up till like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Then we'd all spend the night and we'd go to sleep, and we'd wake up the Saturday morning, we'd play more Madden, and it was awesome. But at the same time, we got no sleep. It was like this, and honestly, it's not the best thing to do with your time, but it was a lot of fun. And what we can find is that in these times, maybe we do things and that's like a lighthearted thing. That's not a big thing. But sometimes we use this idea of like we're only young once, so we might as well do this thing that we might not get to do when we're older. We might use that as an excuse to do some things that aren't great, right? There might be some situations that you might find yourself in. You're like, hey, I'm only young once, so I might make a friend. You might make a friend laugh by making fun of other people. Or maybe you get lazy and just distracted and you stop studying. Maybe that's something that you do. And then, or maybe you overload your bodies with caffeine and your lack of sleep, and that's something like you making it like you're like, oh, I'm only young once, I'll do this, right? We talked about that, and then maybe you get drunk at a party, right? I'm only young once, so might as well just do this. I'm just going to get drunk or whatever. And maybe you gossip about other people. You say, I'm only young once, so I might as well do this, or maybe you hook up with someone impulsively. Maybe you go, hey, I'm only young once, might as well do this, and then maybe you send pictures to somebody that you shouldn't be sending, right? And these things kind of hurt your reputation, or they hurt other people, or whatever it is. Maybe, and maybe you do these things all in the excuse of you're only young once, right? And I'm not bringing these things up. I'm not talking about some of these things to shame you or make you feel guilty. I'm bringing them up because they're things that young people do. They're things that you may have done, or maybe your friends have done, and I'm not here to guilt you. I'm just saying it's not the best thing for you to do, right? It's not the best thing for you to do with your time or your energy when you're young or when you're old. And so this is not meant to be a guilty thing. This is just a reality thing. And so this idea of being young and experimenting and using this time for that can be negative, right? Certainly can be negative. But what we want to talk about is how do you use this time, this time when you're young, to actually do something beneficial, something positive, something that's actually really great for your life that you can only do when you're young. And so how do we actually find these boundaries? How do we go, okay, what's the things that because we're testing the boundaries. When you're young, you like to really test the boundaries. So how do you test these boundaries? What if there's more power in being young than just testing boundaries? What if there's more power than just that? So last week we talked about a verse, and we talked about Paul and Timothy and their relationship, and they're kind of the central focus of this series, Only the Young, because Timothy was a young person. Just like you, he himself was young. And so Timothy and Paul, they went on trips together. They did the work of the gospel together. And then, in fact, Paul put Timothy in a position at a church in Ephesus to be a leader, and he set him up to do that. And then we see this verse actually in 1 Timothy. We have two books of the Bible, 1 and 2 Timothy, that are letters from Paul to Timothy. And we actually, the key verse for our whole series is 1 Timothy 4:12, and it's Paul writing to Timothy, and he says this: "Let no one despise you for your youth, but set the believers an example in speech and conduct and love and faith and purity." So Paul is telling Timothy, he's encouraging Timothy, hey, you're a leader. Though you are young, you're a leader, and set the example in your faith by being a leader. So one thing that we get here is that Paul understood that Timothy wasn't a leader for later. Do you get that? Do you catch that? Paul wasn't saying to Timothy, hey, you're a leader, but that's for later. Paul was saying to Timothy, no, you're a leader right now when you are young. So in order to keep encouraging Timothy to continue his leadership as a young person, to be a leader right now, Paul wrote these words to Timothy later on in that first letter, and he said this, Timothy, guard what has been entrusted to your care. Turn away from the godless chatter and the opposing ideas of what is falsely called knowledge. Now, this scholars have kind of tried to figure out what was he entrusted in care, what exactly. We're not entirely sure what that exactly looked like, but he was in some form of leadership. But here's basically what Paul is saying to Timothy when he says this. He says, hey, whatever you're doing, whatever position you're in, do your best to conduct your personal life when no one is watching in the way that you believe. So no matter whether people are watching you, whether they're not watching you, whether you're a public figure, whether you're a leader, whether you're behind the scenes, whatever it is, he says, conduct yourself that the way you live is consistent with what you preach. And so he says, make sure that you keep people focused on what Jesus said is true about life, about God, and what he says is best. And so for us today, when we look at this and we think about if you're to put yourself in Timothy's shoes here as a young person who has the ability, you're not just a leader later, you can be a leader right now. What does that mean for you? What does it mean that, hey, there's a lot of distractions out there. There's a lot of things that can kind of get in our way. There's a lot of things that aren't even bad things necessarily in our lives. There's school, there's sports, there's family, there's hobbies, there's activities, there's driving, there's friends, all these things. And these are not bad things, but what we see Paul here saying to Timothy, hey, turn away from godless chatter and the opposing ideas with falsely called knowledge. He says, listen, guard what you've been entrusted to your care. He's saying guard it. He's saying, listen, he's saying the things, focus on the best thing, right? Focus on what God is calling you to do. Because Timothy had a purpose in his church. Even as a young leader, he had a purpose. So here's what this means for you, what you can take away from this. Just like Timothy had a purpose in his church in Ephesus as a young leader, you can have a purpose today. In fact, God has a purpose for you in the time that you are a teenager, in the time that you're a middle schooler, high schooler. God actually has a purpose for you right now. Your purpose does not wait until you graduate high school. It does not wait until you get married. It does not wait until you start your career. Your purpose starts right now. And so, what does that mean specifically to you? If you're paying attention to Paul's advice, I think the mission is too important to get distracted by gossip, laziness, treating others poorly, wasting time, or living irresponsible. So here's what this is saying. It's saying that there's a lot of distractions out there. There's a lot of things that can be distracting for us, but God has a bigger purpose. And so Paul telling Timothy, hey, don't be distracted by these other things. Focus on the best things. The same thing is true for you. Don't be distracted by all the other things. Focus on what God is trying to do in your life right now, even as a teenager. And so you actually have a choice. You have a choice. In your teenage years, you have a choice right now. This is our bottom line. Here's what I want you to take away from this whole lesson. You get to decide what your years of being young will be about. Isn't that awesome? You get to decide what your years of being young are actually all about. Now, here's a quick video to kind of help us understand what that means.
The last time I Googled this, and you know I Googled it because nobody has time to do this math, I learned that you have about 209 weeks of life throughout your 4 years of high school. And in this jar are about 209 marbles. Each marble represents a week of the 4 years that you have in high school. That's 209 weeks that you get to choose how you will use. So think about it. I mean, TikTok's a really big deal right now, so maybe you want to use some of your weeks for that. I don't know, maybe that's too many. Who knows? It's up to you to choose. Or maybe it's just hanging out with your friends. I mean, friends are a big deal. They should be. They should be a big deal for the rest of your life. So maybe you spend quite a bit of time there. Maybe it's at work because you have to have a job. A job is a really big deal. Maybe it's to you, or maybe it is to your parents or step-parents, but you have to have a job. Oop, that one almost got away, but we'll put it in there, all right? Or maybe it's practice, because you have that coach. They're a great person and all of that, but they work you very hard. So it seems like you spend most of your week at practice. Look, here's the deal. No matter how you choose to use your time, these 4 years are ones that you will never get back. And the important thing to remember is that you are the one who gets to choose. You get to choose which jars you fill up in life, what you do with these marbles, or what you do with the weeks of your lives. Now, it might not feel like it all the time, especially when your coach or your boss is telling you what to do. But ultimately, the story of these 4 years of your life will come down to how you spent the majority of your time. I mean, maybe you'd rather spend more time investing in your financial future. If there was a jar up here for that, you'd fill that one with a lot of marbles. So you choose to work more often. Or maybe your friendships really do matter a lot to you. So a lot of your time goes to hanging out. That would be another jar. There are so many different jars that we could put up here representing the things that we can choose to do with our time. I mean, maybe you want to build a habit of serving other people. So volunteering would be a jar, and it would be full of marbles because you would give a significant amount of your time there. Honestly, there's so many good things that you can invest your time in. Now, of course, we can also easily spend our time on things that might not matter as much, but the beautiful thing is you get to choose. So what do you really want? Because you get to decide what your years of being young will be about.
All right, so from that video, we see all those marbles, and we see the weeks of a time of a high school student. The high school student only has 209 weeks. Sorry, middle school students, one day you'll be in high school, and then you'll have 209 weeks, right? And so here's the thing. When you think about all the weeks and how you spend up your time and how you split it all up, your time in high school, will you be making an impact, or will you just be doing something else? Will those weeks be about taking your potential to make a difference seriously, or about the distractions that can easily get in the way? And this is what it's really all about, is how are you going to spend your time that you have? The 209 weeks you have in high school, and even more if you're in middle school. But how will you spend those time? How will you spend those weeks? Is it going to be doing things that things that are distractions, things that are not necessary? Or is it going to be things that honor the Lord, that are the purpose that God has? Can you reach your friends with the gospel with those weeks? And see, the truth is that you're only young for a little while. You may not get this now. Older people understand. You're only young for a little while, and you can only be young for a little while, and you can only do things when you're young for a little while. And so, what do you do? What do you do with this information? What do you do knowing that the time you have when you're young is limited, and you can make an impact right now? Here's some things that you can do. You can ask God, what do you have for me? Ask God. If you've never thought about this, think, God, what do you want for me in my teenage years? How do you want me to live? How do you want me to be a light, the light of Christ to the world, in my community, in my school, in my family, amongst my friends? How can I represent you? What are you calling me to do right now, today, as a teenager? What do you want me to do? Ask that question. God, what do you have for me? And maybe you might be thinking, hey, I don't even know where to begin with that. Maybe you talk to your small group leader. Maybe you find an adult that you trust. Maybe you talk to me, you go, hey, what does it look like to actually put my faith to action and spend these young years for Christ right now? And they can help you. They can point you in the right direction to say, hey, here's some things that I see that you're good at, and here's some ways you can serve, and here's some things that you can start serving Christ and making an impact right now as a young person. The second thing is this: you can evaluate what you're currently up to. Right? And maybe here's a question you can start. You can ask, how might my words, actions, habits, or friends be distracting me from what God has for me? Now, again, here's the thing. Sometimes all those things are not bad things. Sometimes they are. Right? And how can the good and bad things actually be distracting us from the best thing, which is our relationship with God and what He wants us to do right now? So you need to evaluate your current situation. This isn't about filling you with shame. Okay, we're not trying to say, hey, shame, you shouldn't do this, or never having fun, or suddenly dropping everything and everyone. That's not what this is about. We're not saying, hey, never have fun again, ignore people, we're not saying that. But this is about evaluating the reality of your current high school and middle school experience to see so that you can begin to have the best life that God wants for you. So, when you decide to take these steps, you'll be deciding that you want your years of being young to be about all that God has for you. So, as we wrap up today and we finish this, and I hope to see you on Sunday at small groups, and we can hash this out. We can talk more about what this looks like. You can talk about that in your small group, and your leaders and your friends will be in there. But here's one thing that I want you to think about. And as we close up, and we're talking about you get to decide how you spend your years of being young. You get to decide what that looks like. You get to decide, are you going to use it to chase after Christ? Are you going to use it to realize that God has you doing something right now? Or are you just going to do whatever? You get to decide what it's for. So here's the question that I want you to think about going into, for the rest of the week into small groups. Here's what I want to think about. What do you want your middle school and high school years to be about? Think about that. And I'll see you on Sunday. Have a great day.